What's up, everyone, and welcome back to HBCU Football Friday Nights, where we preview some of the top games this Saturday on HBCU Game Day. I am Symone Stanley, joined tonight by Wilton Jackson. Wilton, how are you doing?
I am good, Symone. This is going into week 4. I'm excited. I feel like we were just talking about like week 0 and Labor Day Classic games and things like that. And now we're already in week 4, and we've pretty much learned a lot already in the first 3 weeks with so much more to gain in the next several weeks.
Football season just moves too fast. But we're going to enjoy it while it's here. So let's go ahead and talk about it. First of all, my apologies. And I think Wilton needs to apologize to Pirate Nation too, because you guys are the real HU. We know now because they have gotten 2 back-to-back wins over Howard University. This time last week, it was a 35-34 thriller.
Symone, I like you said, I have to apologize to the Pirates. I definitely picked Howard to win that game, and obviously through the majority of 3 quarters, I was pretty much right. I mean, you have a lead, you're up 17 at the end of or going into the latter part of the 3rd quarter, and then obviously those miscues, right? That Howard had in that game, and it's just like, Howard had no answer for Elijah Burrs. I mean, my gosh, he put on a clinic. You're talking about that one play that Howard had in terms of that 24-yard field goal. That was a play that I felt like they needed a touchdown, and they didn't get that touchdown. And so you get that, you get the 3 points. But when I think back to that play, you have to think after that, you talk about a Hampton team, you get that big run for a touchdown from Elijah Burrs. Like, I feel like that was a game changer. And from literally Hampton's defense stepping up, making plays on 3rd down, you talk about a Howard team that came into that game really strong on 3rd down conversions. Not when they needed to in that game. And I mean, especially in a rivalry game like that, that's something Coach Larry Scott talked about in his weekly press conference. They're going into the bye week this week, but more so getting back to what they do fundamentally, converting on 3rd downs and obviously limiting turnovers, some things that harmed them, into getting that loss. So like you said, HU, Hampton, that's the real HU right now. So they have the bragging rights for another year.
Right. We should have known. We should have recognized because they were holding the crown from last year. I won't make that mistake again. Don't get it wrong, Pirates. Do not get it wrong. But let's talk about some SWAC teams because we're in the thick of it now. We're in the thick of SWAC play. Like I said, a lot of pretenders will be separated from the real contenders. And we have 2 contenders going at it this Saturday. Alabama State versus Florida A&M. 2 stout defenses going at it. Who do you see coming out on top? We talked before, Wilton, and you said you feel like FAMU is the most complete team right now in the SWAC. Why is that?
I think they're the most more so complete and dominant team, but I've yet to see them put a full game together to fully show that they're the most complete team. And against a team like Alabama State, the Hornets I know aren't gonna bow down to them. This is a team that give or take a couple plays last year were in the mix of some things as well, and so you talk about a Hornets team that has a strong defense this year. You're talking about a defense that's literally in the top 3 in total defense, rush defense, pass defense. They have it all. And so when you think about the playmakers that FAMU have, like, a quarterback like Jeremy Musa, a dynamic rushing attack with 3 dominant running backs. Well, here's the thing. They're going to have to show that against Alabama State. And what we do know is that FAMU can do it. Like, this is the same team that went nearly toe-to-toe with South Florida. And then also, when you look at it this past week, you go up against a smaller opponent in West Florida, but you only score a field goal in the first half. You can't do that, and that's no discredit to West Florida because they have a good team out of the Gulf South Conference. But when you're talking about playing elite defenses and elite teams, night in and night out, in terms of in the SWAC, you have to be prepared. And I can guarantee you, I'm sure Jeremy Musa is going to know where Colton Adams is this week. You're talking about a SWAC preseason defensive player of the year for Alabama State. And we haven't even talked about their secondary and what they can do. And also we've seen, and I'm an advocate for Jeremy Musa, but I've also seen where he struggled against stronger secondaries. So this is a challenge that he's going to see this week. Can he make the right calls? Can he make the right decisions? Because it's going to be a necessity. And when you talk about Alabama State, you almost kind of wonder, okay, which quarterback are you going to get? Are you going to get D Davis from the Southern game, or are you going to get D Davis that lost to Miles College? And on top of that, well, we know that they have Juwan Howell from a rushing attack. D Davis is going to have to be big in this game. He is on top of the defense. We know the defense is going to do their part for the Hornets, but it's going to come down to what D Davis, in terms of his quarterback play, which one are we going to see this week?
Absolutely. It's going to come down to some coaching adjustments, too, because we talk about that powerful FAMU offense, but we saw in the Orange Blossom Classic how that offense went cold in the fourth quarter against Jackson State. And you have a coach like T.C. Taylor who can make adjustments, and we already know Coach Robinson with Alabama State has been on that clipboard, on that iPad, watching that film of Jeremy Musa. We know he's someone who can make adjustments on the fly. So FAMU is going to have to keep that offensive train rolling because we know that those defenses are going to show up. Alabama State's and FAMU's. It's going to come down to the quarterback play. Who wants it more? We're going to see Saturday night. But let's talk about Alcorn State versus Prairie View A&M. Alcorn State back on track after getting a win over McNeese State this past weekend.
You know what, Symone? This was a big win for Alcorn. I was a little nervous about them going into this game because the previous week they had dropped a game against Stephen F. Austin. Obviously, they're not in the Southland Conference anymore, but you know the team that they beat in McNeese was a Southland opponent, but they get a quality win against McNeese, and now you know there's some momentum. You know, again building on the reservation and what they can do. And this is an Alcorn team. You can never count out Alcorn, no matter what. They could go for me. They could go 0-3 to start the season in some way. There's a winning streak or some type of luckiness and streak or continuity that comes with the Braves program around that late September, early October mark that they find a way to string a series of wins. And so here you're talking about getting into the latter part of September, you get an early SWAC West test against Prairie View. And when you look at this Prairie View team, this is a team that kind of has a chip on the shoulder. They were picked to finish near the bottom of the SWAC West. You know, right now they're near the top. Obviously, it's not that many. They're one of two teams that have played a SWAC West game so far, or a conference game so far. So when you think about that, this is not going to be a pushover for Alcorn as well, for either team. Like this game went to overtime last year, and it was in favor of Alcorn. But I think it comes down to if Alcorn, what they do best, run the ball. So that means a heavy dose of Jarvion Howard, Javante Leatherwood, Nico Duffy. If they run the ball like the way that they can run the ball, I think Alcorn gets the win. However, the Panthers defense, and I will say this, granted, they play Abilene Christian and SMU. They haven't been the best on defense, you know, to start the season. But if they can limit Jarvion Howard and Javante Leatherwood and their running backs and force essentially Aaron Allen to be a major factor where he has to throw the ball and put the ball in the air to win the game for Alcorn, I think that smells trouble for Alcorn. It could be a win for Prairie View. But in all honesty, I think Prairie View comes out on top to get this win.
Okay, so is that a rivalry game?
It's not a real rivalry game, but one thing you'll learn about the SWAC West each week towards the end of the season, as it gets through the months of October and early November, every game feels like a rivalry game.
All right, well that's going to be a good one. Now, last game is kind of tricky. We have Jackson State versus Bethune-Cookman University, and on paper, this should be a game where Jackson State comes in and dominates. Do you see Bethune-Cookman giving them any fits in this game?
I wouldn't necessarily say I see Bethune-Cookman giving them fits, but I don't think it'll just be, you know, Jackson State's going to roll over and it's going to be 35-0 in the first half, right? But I do think that Jackson State has, you know, they're going to be able to flex this muscle as long as they control the line of scrimmage on offense, which allows them to, you know, open those running holes for the running back play. You're talking about, you know, your running backs like Irv Mulligan, Ahmad Miller, Desmond Moultrie. You know, more so Ahmad Miller and Desmond Moultrie have come on more so over the last 2 weeks, but we know what Irv Mulligan can do. We've been talking about Irv Mulligan since week 0. And I think that also breeds confidence into Jason Brown. And when you think about that, you look at Jackson State, in terms of where they sit now as a program, you have to say that arguably they have one of the most prolific offenses in the conference. And Coach Taylor alluded to that in his press conference. Like, he's ready to see an offensive explosion, which is something we hadn't truly seen yet. We've seen glimpses of it. We saw a glimpse of it against South Carolina State. But when we weigh where we weigh that game against South Carolina State after, you know, obviously Jackson State played Southern, and then, you know, getting a massive loss against Texas State, but you dropped 34 points against a Texas State team who beat Baylor the previous week. So, and who is an FBS opponent. So I think that if Jackson State comes out on top and offensively is able to control, like I said, control the line of scrimmage, get the running game going early, Jason Brown gets comfortable, it could be a long day for Bethune-Cookman. I can guarantee you that this game will or should have a lot of offense.
All right, well, we have a lot of good games Saturday, so we're going to be tuned in. And, of course, make sure you guys are here next week for the Week 5 preview on HBCU football Friday night. But for tonight, it is Symone Stanley and Wilton Jackson. And until next time.